Well, hello there. How is everyone? I hope you're all well on this wonderful, wonderful Wednesday. That's it, baby. It's Wednesday. I know it's Wednesday now. I didn't know what it was in video one, but we'll just forget about that because normally I know what day it is. You know that. But in this video, we're talking about Bryan Kohberger and a conversation that me and my man Eddie, if you've been around the channel for any length of time, you'll know that me and my man Eddie look into this case in the background. You know, we look at stuff, we try and pay very close attention, and Eddie is someone who pays incredibly close attention to things. And I've got some notes that I'd like to go through with you today regarding the case, and you're looking absolutely amazing, by the way. You must be having a good week so far, and I hope it continues. If you missed video one earlier, talking about Lily and Jack Sullivan, I'll pin that in the, what do you call it, down below in the comment section, so you can go and check that out. There isn't a lot to talk about in that case, I must say, but we just went through some little bits and pieces. Anyway, I'm going to go through some notes. I'm going to put them on the screen, rarely so I can read them because I'm getting old and I can't remember. My memory isn't what it used to be. But I think that if you're following this case, some of you will agree, and some people this will rub it up the wrong way. But let's just go through these notes, right? So it says, those who believe Bryan Kohberger is guilty have not worked to demonstrate this case isn't about reasonable doubt, but with the facts we've learned, doesn't even place Kohberger near the house at any time, just as the state and prosecution has admitted. Which what we're talking about here is in the PCA. If you read the verbiage within the PCA would seem to suggest that it places Bryan Kohberger away from the property at the time of the crime. And that's just the verbiage within the PCA. Now, could it be that the PCA is wrong? Well, we know that the PCA has seemingly been deemed irrelevant. Some people have tried to say that the PCA has been deemed irrelevant because subsequently there was a grand jury indictment, and that kind of superseded the PCA. But from a technicality point of view, yes, I agree with you. But from that was the document that was put together in order to obtain the arrest of Bryan Kohberger. There is relevancy in that document, especially since the behavior in the aftermath of it seems to be to try and distance themselves away from the PCA, and kind of, you know, it's almost like that walking backwards to get away from things because there's just something wrong and they don't perhaps want to get caught with their pants down. But make no bones about it, the verbiage within the PCA would seem to suggest that they'd located Bryan Kohberger away from the property, or they alluded to the fact that he weren't here, he was over here, connected to a tower that services the building. And when you think about it, even up to the latest information regarding Dateline, what they stated that Bryan Kohberger had been on this tower 23 times. And what they tried to do is similar to what the PCA tried to do, and that is to suggest that being connected to a tower that has service or services this property means that they were at the property, and it kind of tries to be clever about it to catch people who perhaps aren't paying close enough attention. And the reality is, as I keep trying to repeat, so some people who may be open to listen, and that is that Bryan Kohberger was caught or was connected to a tower that services an area that goes up to within 100 meters of 1122 King Road. Now that means that technically, it means that Bryan Kohberger wasn't at the property, or he would have been connected to a tower that actually services the apartment, the house, not just on a distance that is up to within 100 meters of. But anyway, let's ease out a little bit, because I know if it gets too complicated, people kind of fucking zone out. So this here, right? So it says, mainstream media, the state, the prosecution, and those who believe Kohberger is guilty are all assuming we'll believe them due to this list of things, right? There's 10 things that they're using to try and make us feel that Bryan Kohberger, he must be the person who did it then. And that is the charges against Kohberger, which is a massive thing. And I know it sounds silly, but the fact that he's got the charges against him, it plays into people's mindset. What have we said? What did I say the other day? That there is literally other DNA found at the scene of this crime. Under the fingernails of one of the victims, blood found at the scene of the crime. But the difference is there is no names attached to them. And why are there no names attached to them? Seemingly because of a protection order, as alluded to within the court documents themselves. Are people paying attention? But that's the difference. Someone who's accused, all of a sudden, they're on the back foot already. Because we do truly know that it isn't about innocent until proven guilty, is it? It's guilty until proven innocent. Kohberger's history, and we put history in capitals here because there is a lack of history, but there's a lot of manipulation around information. And that is that there are little things that can be played with and exacerbated in a negative fashion to give a false representation of who Bryan Kohberger is, because ultimately we don't know who Bryan Kohberger is because there is so little information out there about him. Not really anybody has come forward and truly thrown Bryan Kohberger under the bus. In fact, to the contrary, there's people who have come out who have said that it's not him. You know, I've literally spoken to someone who knows Bryan Kohberger, and they've said that they've got him wrong. They have got him wrong. And look, I'm not saying that this is 100% genuine. I'm just saying that's my experience, and from what I can see out in the media, there isn't really a massive amount that you could attribute to Bryan Kohberger being a dangerous person. What, the text message that came after the pool party where he reached out to someone who had given him her fucking number. And he has just messaged and said, "Hi, I think we spoke yesterday." You know, and yes, the verbiage was a little bit different, but they didn't mention the fact that he is on the spectrum, and that will make him be a bit more matter of fact. But she didn't respond, and lo and behold, he made no further attempts to contact her. K-bar knife purchase 8 months before the crime. Again, relevance, who knows? But it's out there now, and people are utilising that to say that he's guilty of this crime. When in reality, how many other people purchased a K-bar knife 8 months before this crime? Who knows? Looking for a replacement knife and sheath after the attack. Again, without context here, and without seeing the rebuttals to this rarely at this stage means nothing. On the grander scheme of things, yes, it acts as leverage against an opinion, but it's not proof of anything. There was no proof there. It's just information to form an opinion or to bolster an already firm opinion. An Elantra on Linda Lane. Again, if you look at the verbiage within the aforementioned PCA, seemingly suggesting that Bryan Kohberger wasn't at the property, then how can he then have his Elantra on Linda Lane unless the verbiage was incorrect in the PCA, unless something's wrong? But we'll get there in a second. We're going to, as we move through, we will look at information that could potentially mean that it was right. And they're hiding the fact that they knew where he was. The stop at Pullman and Farm Road. What relevance has that got to this crime? Absolutely fuck all. The stop at WSU for entering an intersection. Again, why would you even add that into the mix? What relevance has that got here? But it's just adding little things. That's all that is. D-rug use in high school. Fuck me. How many kids in the US use D-rugs around high school and university? I would imagine that even the people inside 1122 King Road were doing it. Granted, he was seemingly involved in some of the more harder stuff, but it was when he was younger. He'd come out the other side. He'd got into education. He was doing a doctorate program to become a doctor. Alleged DNA taken off a sheath, then sending the sheath to ISP. This is the golden goose here, but people are given too much credibility to this piece of information. The sheath weren't sent anywhere. There was seemingly a sample taken off a sheath and then sent round the houses. And lo and behold, eventually through some multiple strange scenarios that went from going to one lab and not finding anything, an excuse made regarding CODIS it was an excuse. It was ludicrous. It wasn't factually accurate. It then leads to the FBI, who they claim to have done all this work, yet provide absolutely no evidence, proof, or paperwork to back it up, and just come back with a name. And then subsequently, you have Riley Nolan turn around saying, well, the FBI never said that Bryan Kohberger's DNA was on the knife sheath. They just done the work and come back to us with a name. One of the reasons Hitler is seeking who released the footage on King Road is this is not Kohberger's car, so prosecution is freaking out. What we're saying here is there's a lot of information regarding what was leaked and why has it pissed Hitler off so much, because Hitler could have rarely... He knew that stuff was being leaked out into the ether. He knew that people were alluding to the fact that he knew more. If not, then he wasn't paying attention because we knew. But now we've got this footage, this image of this car released by Dateline. I believe that he has very likely looked at the original PCA. He's determined that there is an issue with the placement of Bryan Kohberger and where he is in proximity to this house. And all of a sudden you have people who are like, you're digging yourself more of a hole here now. We've raised issues about the white Hyundai Elantra. Could it have in fact been a different Hyundai Elantra? Not the one that's involved, but this green Hyundai Elantra. And I know people are spinning out with respect to this green Elantra, but I think it's because it's become a completely different beast. And in reality, it's just about, was this green car driving around and did it get placed into footage to make it look like it was part of this crime and pass it off as a white one? Do you know what I mean? I'm not getting into the weeds of it because it's overly complicated already. But I think that the question is there truly evidence of Bryan Kohberger being at 1122 King Road? Is there anything that actually places him there? It's not caught on camera. You can't see him in the car. There are questions around the Elantra. The Elantra itself doesn't... It's not definitive proof that it's Bryan Kohberger's car, and we have issues with the footage. It is what it is. People either listen or they won't. The PCA didn't find Kohberger in close proximity to the house in the PCA and was admitted by the state and prosecution through their court filing. As a matter of fact, he was in another cell tower during the time of the murders, and this is the issue here. This is the issue about the cell. What cell tower was he connected to? Because the PCA would seem to suggest that he was connected to a tower, the same fucking tower that they talked about in Court TV or Dateline, you know, the Dateline fucking documentary. And that is the one that services an area up to within 100 meters of 1122 King Road. And how do we know that that is possible? And that is that we've got search warrants that were filed that people are still waiting for the response, the receipts of it, the carry on. Look, here is a question to all questions. Why in the PCA would you find the defendant not physically present to commit the murders, arrest and charge with the murders, knowing now and admitting he could not have been responsible for the attack? Answer, could it be any more obvious? The state and prosecution are hoping to get a conviction against the defendant who was not present in lieu of those who were present during the attack. In the phony 911 call, the alleged neighbour girl said, there was a man in there last night. Yeah, think back on who we know was also present. Who are Showalter? Remember at the grub truck? No doubt he was going to the house. He was walking with them. At what point did he come away from them? Why, if he was walking with them, did he walk them to the property? Ethan's brother, the SUV was in the driveway. Likely Hunter Johnson when the call to 911 happened. When did that call happen? How do we know when it really happened? What? Because we're being told it happened at a certain time? The call sounded staged. The call to me sounded staged. DoorDash driver, the car at 3:56:30 on King Road. That's freaking out prosecution and Hitler. This DoorDash driver's car, and I believe the DoorDash driver's car is the car that they're trying to pass off as Bryan Kohberger's, and I think Eddie is in agreement with that. And then you've got Eric Gower, who had a Taco Bell receipt. Eric Gower, why were they even trying to contact Eric Gower? and Eric Gower's connection to, through his wife and his own activities previously dressing up as Santa, his connection to Moscow Police Department. So we are to believe Kohberger entered a house with this number of apartment buildings and houses, all in a dense, compacted setting to commit 4 murders with this number of people present in the house. The state and prosecution says he was in the area of another cell tower after the arrest. Do you know what I mean? There's a lot. I know there's a lot of moving pieces. There's a lot of things to take into consideration and listen. But the fact of the matter is, people aren't listening. They're just listening to the information that helps bolster their version of events, what they want to be true. And when you look into the weeds of this, there isn't a lot of things that can be trusted that are being said and stated against Bryan Kohberger. The DNA has issues. The car has issues. His location has issues. I haven't even gone into the weeds with Cy Ray in this video. But Cy Ray is saying that the information is available. His location is available. Bryan Kohberger himself had stated early that he was looking to get exonerated, and he specifically stated about his phone would be the thing that would help to exonerate him because they would be able to track where he was. Look, Bryan Kohberger, the very thing that Bryan Kohberger likely thought would get him off was very likely the thing that got him hung. And that is that if he was a loner, someone who was an outsider, and they could show that he was out in the sticks in the fucking arse end of nowhere on his own with no one, no witnesses, no nothing, he couldn't say where he was, no one would be able to back him up. And they wanted to hide the people who had done this crime because of money, because of power. And I know it's tinfoil hat stuff, but it happens. It happens. Could it be that they were chasing him and they just fucked up and got it wrong? But he's just in this unique position where he's on his own. He's a loner. He goes out at night and just happens to be in this area. And he's the fall guy for it. Who knows? Time will tell, but let me know what you think down below. Why do you think Bryan Kohberger is guilty? What was the straw that broke the camel's back for you? And if you still believe that he is innocent of this crime, what is holding you firmly in that place? Love you all, and I'll catch you all in the next one. Mwah.